IVM.
All right. Welcome to Shunya One. I'm your host, Shiladitya, and I'm back with another episode of this awesome show with my co-host, Amit Doshi.
Hey, what's going on?
Amit Doshi, as you know, is the founder and CEO of Indus Vox Media, which brings you this awesome podcast.
Yes, it does.
And where do we find you on Twitter?
I am Doshi Amit on Twitter.
Great. I am at Shiladitya, and this is our show. Have with us another amazing guest and fellow entrepreneur, Naiyya Saggi. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Thanks so much for being on the show after all this massive coordination between all of us with our busy lives. And I think that happens with everyone.
I'm not busy. I'm just here all the time. So whenever you guys want to, I'm just here.
Yeah, we all have to come here, Amit. That's the thing.
Exactly. That's the thing. So I'm just here.
Great. All right. So before I get into further jokes, I think let me introduce Naiyya. Naiyya is obviously the founder of BabyChakra, and she's been, creating waves ever since BabyChakra was founded. I think doing some awesome stuff in a very unique domain, unlike most other entrepreneurs which you may hear about, doing fintech or food tech or all the other buzzwords which show up on the first page of pink newspapers. I think what you're doing is something really interesting and amazing, and kudos to the journey so far, which we all want to hear about. So how did BabyChakra happen, and what's it been like?
So, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I think it's fabulous to be here and actually talking about our company and our journey, right? And hello to everyone who's listening out there. It's great to have you sort of tune in. BabyChakra, the journey started about a little over 2.5 years back. And, it was based on two pretty much principles that we operate with. First is that parents are not second-class citizens in technology. And number two, that every parent wants to be the best parent he or she can be, right? So, when I moved back to India, my sister had just had a baby and she was struggling, right? She's this really accomplished corporate lawyer, very, very smart, always on the internet. And when she started looking for simple things like a good pediatrician for my nephew, or, what's a good, even when she was deciding on hospitals, right? What's the right hospital to give birth in? Or what's a good preschool to, over time send my nephew to? She was struggling. And it was such a pity, because here was this really smart, very, very sort of digital savvy woman, and she was helpless. So I think that was pretty much sort of the seed to BabyChakra, if you will. And I did a bunch of interviews. I met a bunch of other mothers, other dads, and I realized that she was not the only one with this struggle. So that was pretty much a genesis to BabyChakra. Of course, maternal and child health has always been something I've been passionate about for close to a decade now. I was earlier at McKinsey and I was working extensively in MCH and had a chance to sort of create, policies around child nutrition, maternal health. So this has been something that's been a steady stream, pretty much part of my story and part of my life throughout. So it's a pleasure to be building out BabyChakra now.
Great. And like you said, seeing a problem sort of firsthand gave you the insight that, yes, there is, even for a generation like this, which is so digitally savvy, and has access to information. There's Google, there's all the other generic platforms of the world. What made you think that something so specific is that large enough, diaspora to go after? What gave you more insights beyond just the category you were directly involved with?
So, just think about how we all make decisions today, right? Essentially, the two massive trends that we are riding on. And I think now is the perfect time to be building and creating something like BabyChakra. The first big trend is the trend of data democracy, right? So you look at how Geo has come in and completely changed the whole sort of how we consume, the rules on like how we consume and how much we consume online, right? And how online consumption is now becoming a part of, how we operate day in, day out, right? Yeah. And the second big sort of trend, if you will, is look at smartphone prices, right? And if you look at how India has completely leapfrogged, we didn't even go through the desktop or the laptop sort of quote unquote revolution, right? We pretty much leapfrogged into a smartphone ecosystem. And what that means essentially is that there are more women who for the first time in history have access to the internet.
Right.
Right? And what are these women looking for? Honestly, they're not even on Facebook groups. Why? Because they feel Facebook is not safe. It's not a trusted platform for them to be part of. Right? So where do they come to, and what do they really access? Or what are they even allowed to access online? It's stuff around parenting. It's stuff around family. It's stuff around healthcare. It's stuff around what's good for themselves and their kids, right? So, of course, there's a, 20, 25 million, you can take it to about 40, 45 million women who would be my natural demographic, but the opportunity is so much more massive. Right. And I'm looking at the next 100 million.
Nice. And see, again, you mentioned women as a category. Obviously, there are other startups and generally entrepreneurs who are going after women as a category, which is big, right? As an opportunity, it is all these factors which you mentioned, which are bringing the Indian population overall into the smartphone age. Many people have focused on, other like fashion and these other categories which are particularly women oriented. But at the same time, doing something like this, which is very close knit, right? These are things, like you said, people weren't even comfortable going and openly sharing on a Facebook like community, which is supposedly like a walled garden and protected and genuine identity and all of that. Even though people had that, they still felt they needed a little bit a better place. So why do you think that is? What do you think? What goes through that certain category of women which they need something like this for?
So it's not only about this category of women. I think it's just the way our society has evolved, right? So we've gone very, very rapidly from being a joint family structure to being a nuclear family structure, right? And one of my, I think the most startling insights that I keep sharing everywhere I go is that today we're a land of nuclear families, right? 70% of India lives in nuclear families. And that's not just in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, right? We're talking across India.
Well, that actually is really surprising. I had no idea that was the case.
This is not my data. It's not back of really envelope calculation. This is NFHS,
yeah,
right? The National Family Health Survey.
Yeah, I always thought we were more of a joint family country.
Exactly, right? So, and I think that...
It's slowly changing. It is changing.
It's already changed, right? 70% nuclear means it's already changed.
It's massive. And hence, if you just sort of look at, what the joint family structure provided you, the biggest sort of safety net and the biggest support infrastructure around child caring, maternity, etc. was the joint family structure, right? So now suddenly you move from this paradigm of where you've all lived in joint families, you have traditional sources of knowledge, you have the right information, the right care sort of ecosystem, and suddenly you move to a unit of 2, you and your husband, and you have this little creature come into your life and you guys are like, what just happened? This is a whole new world. This is a whole new journey. So who do you have guiding you through that journey? No one. Right? And that's where BabyChakra comes in.
Right. And that's amazing. So see, this is obviously data gives you all of this insight. And once you start on the product and the journey of building this, I think it started as a community and now obviously the tech has helped it evolve into a whole much more. And I'm sure there's a very interesting roadmap ahead as well. What have you seen in terms of once you were building this team, right? It was you. And how did you go about starting out building your team? How do you get people inspired to be on your team when it's a very unique product like this or a very unique segment like this that you're going after? Because may or may not be that everyone relates to it, right? In the team, but how do you get everyone on the same page on this?
So honestly, when we started off BabyChakra, people would ask, what's the proxy in the US, right? Yes. And what are you building that's in the US?
My next question was about fundraising.
Yeah, and I can tell you more about that journey. Yeah. One of the lessons I think that I've taken away in the process of building out a team is people will find you. The best people will find you. Right. So in the beginning, I used to be very obsessed with finding the right talent and find the best people. So it's a bit counterintuitive because that's what everyone will still tell you. Right. But I think in the beginning, it's you. It's your journey. You have to build attraction and then the best people find you. And that's what played out for me. Right. So I'm a non-tech founder. I come from a consulting background, from an MBA background. And I'm an erstwhile lawyer, right? So I have like the worst of all worlds combined to start up a venture in this space. And then I think, we launched a really crappy website, a mobile website when we started off. And I think the traction pretty much spoke for itself, right? And I think then the word started spreading that things are interesting at this company called BabyChakra. And we then started attracting people, and they would reach out to me through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through introductions. So till now as well, I think some of our most successful hires have been folks who came in through references, people who actually saw BabyChakra and did not see for what it is today, but what it could be. Right? And that is the kind of team we want to have. And in terms of getting people who don't relate to the product, that's not always the case, right? That's not always necessary. So just to give you a sense, we have this seminal book on parenting, what to expect when you're expecting, in our office library. And one day it was missing.
Definitely heard that title.
It's a very, very popular book. It's a bestseller and has been for a while. It was missing from the office library, and I go into the the lunch area, and I see one of my 23-year-old engineers, a male engineer, sort of, pretty much with his feet up with a cup of coffee reading that book, right? Because that, I think, when you're building something that is truly potentially a game changer in the way Indian families operate, you are beyond just thinking about building a product for yourself. You're building a product that has a meaning.
Right. And I think that's what you were able to show, or people who joined you and came to you were able to see that, right? I think that's also something important to understand. Like we were talking before, how there's this certain glamour about entrepreneurship and startups which is out there right now, has happened over the last few years, maybe because suddenly it's cool to join a startup, work in a startup, build a startup or whatever it is. Some of that is definitely misguided, and we've spoken about that before, how it's people join teams for the wrong reasons, expecting the wrong things. But I think the best hires, like you said, are the ones who actually buy into that vision, right? Who understand that vision that you
take ownership in the company.
As a founder, you have a vision and you are able to convey that adequately.
And I think not just my vision, but our vision. I think where we are today as a product has actually evolved tremendously based on what everyone is making of that vision, of that original vision, right? And I think that's really, that's what's so special about the team we have today at BabyChakra.
Yeah, and I know you guys went through like a round of funding and a few rounds of funding, and even your investors who are uniquely positioned to understand exactly what you're doing, right? Even though you were separate from this, again, the hyped up landscape of all the other tech entrepreneurs that we have here. What do you think? What's the insight they see? What do you think they see? Obviously, the opportunity is huge and the potential for something like this is huge. But as a segment, again, there are very few similar such startups in this genre. And are there any international equivalents also?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in China you have, I think about at least 7 unicorn companies, massive unicorn companies that are in a similar space.
Wow.
So I think China definitely offers a bunch of very interesting analogous companies.
Yeah.
In the US, there are now companies emerging, such as Fatherly and all, and these are more in the digital media / publishing space. So they're a little different from from what we do, which is essentially provide, be a companion to a parent, right? To specifically a young mother through her journey through pregnancy and parenting. In terms of our investors, I mean, I think we've been very fortunate. So we've, as you said, we've raised 2 rounds of funding. The first one was from Mumbai Angels, Singapore Angels Network, and Arihant Patni. And Arihant, by the way, is fabulous. He's actually since become a mentor, not just to the company, but also to me personally. And our second round of funding was our Series A from Roundglass Partners. And, I think one of the reasons we found a match in our mission was because they invest in digital health and wellness products.
Right.
And for us, 70% of our questions, just given the nature of the life stage we serve, is around healthcare.
Wow. And I think that's the obvious, that's the perfect blend of business, business and brands also, which come in at that point, right? After you've built the community, I think that's the best way you can go ahead. And what can you share about the kind of business associations that you currently do? Is there anything interesting you can?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what's really, really interesting about us as a platform for brands has been, I think, 2 specific things. Number one, of course, we have one of the largest community of young mothers online, right? And these are mothers who are not just visiting or just plain consuming, but actually creating content. Right? So I think what brands love about BabyChakra is the fact that you not only have a chance to interact with these mothers, but actually have these mothers become potential evangelists for you.
Right.
And I mean, all of us probably have friends who are mothers, and they're the most vocal in either referring or dissing
yes.
a product, right? So I think
yes.
they're the best evangelists you could potentially have. I think the second thing that's really special about BabyChakra is that, we are able to provide multiple touch points and all backed by data and very, very deep analytics. So a brand pretty much knows how effective his or her sort of messaging has been, and what is the uptake and what is the brand uplift. And I think that's really special about what we do at BabyChakra, because you could be spending a lot of money on digital and not really see much return. But here you actually have a consumer of a brand message actually respond, so you can immediately see a tangible sort of ROI on your investment.
Right. And so that was actually leading to my next question. So since you've built the community first, and then the community obviously grew word of mouth, like you said, and then you did customer acquisition maybe from social media and all these other places where typically brands today invest blindly. Like digital investment is part of their, like,
part of what they need
they
to
have
do.
to spend this much money on digital. So, and now there are these very siloed communities suddenly being more valuable to people.
Because you have a very tight demographic, right?
Yeah, and the demographic, that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're actually the people who go out and spend, and they actually the people who go out and give your brand relevance by spending on them, right? So I know at one point you must be seeing a lot of interesting projects which a brand probably wants to do with your community. How experimentative is your community though? Like, I'll tell you where I'll draw the comparison from. Like, if you have a bunch of enthusiasts about a topic, it could be coffee, it could be whatever. A brand might want to come in and say, hey, can you give my product a try? Coffee guys will probably give it a try. If they like it, great. If they don't, they don't. But mothers who are in a life stage like this, I don't think people are open to trials so much, right? They want more assured stuff.
I won't talk about a brand activity or an activation we did, but I'll tell you something we did at BabyChakra, which is like a bit crazy if you're not a parent to think about. We actually created a digital milk bank. Right?
Okay.
So basically, a lot of mothers are unable to breastfeed their kids because they're unable to actually produce milk.
Wow,
right?
okay.
But I mean, think about it, right? The first 6 months as a child, you need breast milk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what you need, and that's what you need as a child, and that's what you need to give as a mother. So what we realized was that mothers were actually reaching out earlier in the joint family. They would reach out to a bhabhi or to a friend of a friend and say, you're feeding, you're still breastfeeding. Would you share your breast milk with my child?
Right. Wow.
Right? And we had this community. So we were like, why not just replicate what was happening earlier? And so what we have done is, because BabyChakra is, of course, a community, but we have enough data to localize the messages we send out. We know the life stage, literally down to the day of the child's age, hence we can really connect in the right way at the right time with the mother. So we can actually pass along messages saying this mother needs help and she needs breast milk. Can someone in the area of, let's say, Powai or Ghatkopar or Goregaon help? And we can send that message off to mothers who are literally lactating at that point in time. So we've created a digital milk bank,
Wow.
this is what is being used. So I mean, if you're talking about mothers being open to experimentation, I mean, I think our mothers rock.
That's awesome. See, this is the kind of thing you, even as a person externally not involved in this community, would assume that it's not, right? You tend to think that mothers are super closed up and they don't, they only want to go to super trusted sources. But clearly you guys have built a community which
But I think
allows
that's the power of community too, right? I mean, like by virtue of being a community, you're able. There's a certain trust that comes out to other members of the community as well. So I'm guessing that is being leveraged over here. It's a brilliant idea, man. This is really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and so I know there's a lot of stories which have also come out from the community, which I want to talk to you about later. But one of the things, since we mentioned this earlier about how your community grew and is now all the more growing faster and faster, is the Facebook story. So I know you were recently on a very clandestine trip to Silicon Valley to a very secretive meeting with the Facebook team. What happened there?
I like how you make it sound so much more sexier than it was. But no, I mean, it was just a meeting set up by Facebook, and it was an incredible privilege. Honestly, we got a chance to spend some really good quality, pretty much one-on-one time with Mark and his leadership team, and sort of share a bunch of perspectives from building communities in contexts like India, in a context that's essentially women-centric, and I mean, of course, to learn. Right? And I think that was fabulous because his team is fabulous. His style of entrepreneurship is incredible. I mean, he can, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I mean, I think his ability to talk about India, to talk about the opportunities and the challenges in India, and the ability to go broad and deep on some of these topics is brilliant. He could, in my head, he could literally have been one of us, an entrepreneur in India, looking at the potential and looking at the possibilities and talking about it.
Yeah, so
Very
clearly,
inspiring.
they, the entire Facebook team sees India as a huge opportunity, as we know. Specifically for the kind of stuff you're doing, what do you think? What did you get to see, which you're now looking to imbibe in your roadmap ahead, or?
I don't think anything changes per se, Sheila. I think it's more about just doing what we're doing with our heads down and being very focused on things like building and continuing to build more trust with our members, continuing to protect their identities, continuing to create networks of meaningful networks that provide, that create impact. So I think, nothing drastically that changes, but I think helping us prioritize what we were doing and sort of learning from an at-scale global experience that Facebook has and using those applications in our BabyChakra context.
No, definitely, like you said, it was a privilege, and I'm sure it will impact your roadmap ahead, much going ahead as well. I do want to know, so since we're talking about the community and how it started and how it's growing now, what all tech do you use which you can say is really helping make this go all over, go bigger than it could have ever gone before?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I think a big learning for me has been think about what you want your consumer to experience and what your user to experience and what adds value to her or his life, and then build accordingly. Right. And some of these things are some very, very simple feature sets, and some of these are much more complex in terms of, the algorithms you build out or sort of how you undertake to create a certain experience. So just to give you two very quick examples. BabyChakra, and I love the fact that both of you use the word community because fundamentally that's what we want to feel like. But actually what we are is a very, very smart, very personal companion, right? So the entire experience that, every mother has a different and a very unique BabyChakra experience, right? And that's powered by machine learning, and that's powered by our proprietary algorithms that take in more than 150 data points from every interaction that she has with BabyChakra, right? So that is pretty much what we're building at BabyChakra in terms of the overall experience. In terms of some of the simple things that have helped the community grow, it was a simple insight, and we were seeing mothers trying to find each other in comments and trying to sort of tag each other. And this was a behavior that was, I think, probably from their experience using Facebook. And they were using tags on BabyChakra, but we hadn't activated tags yet, right? So then we basically just activated something as simple as you could tag a user. But we took it like at least 10 steps further on BabyChakra. So now you can tag a user, you can also tag an article, you can tag a question, you can tag a product, you can tag a service, you can tag a whole bunch of things on BabyChakra, right? So it just makes two things. Number one, the community grow faster because people are finding each other and getting each other involved, right? On a particular topic of interest. And number two, it helps the process of discoverability.
Right. Okay, so that's what you said, right? Ultimately, user experience is what matters, and in this case, every user's experience could be fairly different or change from time to time. And I know you have a quote which says, your product is targeted at the -9 to +5 age group, right? So, and I find that very interesting. I think it's.
Do you like the quote?
I love it.
Good.
I love the quote.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it's a great quote.
I have another quote which says, "BabyChakra is going to be to parenting what Uber is going to be to transport."
It's not going to be. It's already. Uber already is to transport. We are hoping to be to parenting.
Yes. No, so obviously, these are statements which actually show the way in which you guys are growing, and it's commendable, right? So I think all the kudos to you and the team which is helping do this. Coming back to the building the product and building it out, you're obviously based here in Bombay, and are you thinking of moving to Bangalore because you need tech people? Has that crossed your mind?
So I'm a team of about 50 people. 30 of those people have actually moved to Bombay to be with BabyChakra. So if I suggest moving anywhere else, I'm probably going to get lynched on Monday. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
No, I'm so happy you said that. So I think whoever's listening in, if you're in Bangalore especially, I think you should move to Bombay to a company like BabyChakra.
Yes, absolutely. Or Hipcask.
Yes. Of course.
We're looking for data scientists, by the way. Call out.
Wonderful.
Good job recruiting.
Great. No, so I think we're gonna take a quick break and come back and talk some more about some insightful stories from the community as well.
Sure. Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Amit Verma, the host of the weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen. In my show, I examine the seen effects and the unintended consequences of public policy and private action. I show how policies meant to help the poor often end up hurting the poor. I've done episodes so far on demonetization, GST, surgical strikes, immigration and MRP. And I will continue my forensic assault on the truth in the weeks to come.
Catch the show every Monday on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you prefer. Or visit seenunseen.in for all the latest updates.
Hey, welcome back, guys. And before I get ragged more, or I am being blamed for...
I don't feel like you've been ragged at all this time. She's been very nice to you compared to, off camera, or rather off mic. The ragging has been much more intense than it's been on mic.
So I think, and before anyone listening asks about me and my parenting plans, which seems to also be a very popular subject on Twitter somehow. I don't know
and
why.
on BabyChakra, by the way. It did come up in community conversations on BabyChakra.
So, see, I walked right into that one. So, bringing the conversation back to the community, the awesome community that you've built, Naiyya. I know, again, as a person who's not yet involved personally in this space as a user, but clearly seeing that there's so much of a need for questions and answers around this subject, which happen to all of us and various people at various stages of their life. Like in a city like ours, all these nuclear families, like you mentioned, mothers who are suddenly thrust into this aspect of their life while also handling a career, while also dealing with HR, while also dealing with their friends and family and extended family and whatnot. So I'm sure you see a lot of interesting insights and stories which get told on your platform. So what are the ones which you could share with us which have stood out? Like things which you realize later are not so obvious, and then you get to see that happening unfold on your platform.
So I think, Sheila, honestly, we've been very, very fortunate at BabyChakra because, so I do have a team, a communities team. I think we were one of the first companies in India to have a dedicated communities team when we were starting off, and we were literally at that point in time bootstrapped. And the reason we wanted to have a communities team was because, as you've pointed out earlier, community is our heart and soul, right? And my communities team is actually Neha, Asha, Priya. They've actually come back saying, I haven't been able to sleep last night. And it's sometimes because of sheer joy, and sometimes it's because of just the stories they hear, right, on BabyChakra. So I think a couple of stories that really stood out, middle of the night, a mom, many mums have done that, but this happened. And I distinctly remember the first time this happened. A mum post saying that my water just broke. What do I do? Right? And like 3 a.m. in the morning, I think Naiyya's responding to her saying, just go to the hospital, I guess. And at 5:30 a.m. that morning, we see a photo of a little newborn baby on the BabyChakra app, right? And the whole team celebrates the next working day, right?
Wow.
So I think there's stories like that which are just, such inspiring stories and just amazing stories, because there's so much like tradition around sharing a child's photo. Mm-hmm. And for a newborn baby's photo to be shared on our platform is something so special. So I think delightful stories like this, but there are also stories that make you realize that honestly, Indian families need so much help. We recently did a blogathon on BabyChakra, which is where mums basically came forward and shared some really honest experiences they hadn't shared earlier. And we had 2 or 3 cases where mums shared stories which they had not even shared with their family and on any other platform, on, them being sexually abused as children, or having gone through an abortion without their husband knowing, or having, when they had their miscarriage, right? The trauma and the pretty much like the anxiety they went through, right? And the medical problems they went through. So there were stories like these, right? These are stories that have kept us up at night because, frankly, we are at the receiving end in many ways, right? And these are human stories. And it's amazing and very inspiring that BabyChakra is the platform they choose to tell them.
Right. So when you as a platform, when you hear all of this, and your job, like you said, you have great community managers to regulate our content or to react to stuff. How much as a platform do you see yourself currently or even in the future getting involved in actually facilitating the needs of these users beyond just listening to their stories?
So our job as a platform is to empower. Right? That's what BabyChakra stands for. We are a companion. As a companion, we're non-judgmental, we're trustworthy, and we want to empower you. Think about your best friend, right? What does your best friend do? Who's a companion to you, right? Someone who basically is someone you can trust, does not judge you for what you need or what you are, and can help guide you in the right direction. Right. So that's pretty much what we do at BabyChakra. So just to give you a couple of examples, in case someone reaches out saying that my mother-in-law is saying that, give Parle-G biscuit dipped in milk to my child who's 3 months old, and that's a period in time where the child should obviously be exclusively breastfeeding, then, we can give the right information either through content or through connecting that person with an expert, or, of course, our community of moms are super, I think they're very vocal about making the right information heard. But there is also times, like I mentioned earlier, let's say someone needs some urgent medical attention. Right. That's where we are very, very clear that this is the nearest, maybe, gynecologist in your neighborhood, or why don't you look here for the nearest nursing home and get yourself medical attention ASAP. Right. So that's pretty much where we draw the line, because we are not a medical platform, right? We are a community platform, we are a wellness platform. We want to support you and empower you.
And I think that's making that distinction is where it helps also, right? As a platform, what to trust, what to do, what to feel enabled for, and then go ahead. Jumping a little more into this, like we were talking earlier about how this is a niche, right? It's still it's a niche with its own set of problems. It's a niche with its own set of challenges as well. Yet it's such a big deal. It's it happens to everyone, literally half the population. For sure.
Probably and a little more than that.
And ideally even the other half has to go through being a parent. Right. So while it is niche, it's obviously also a huge opportunity. So what are the unique insights you have from, building for a community like this?
Sure. Just to give you a sense, right, this is a massive market. Let's not sort of beat around the bush on that. This is a massive market. It's a massive opportunity. You're talking about a $34 to a $40 billion market. It's a market that's pretty much 2.5 times the size of Bollywood, right? Okay. Many people don't realize that. Yeah. It is probably the largest market in the region. So we're talking about this being the size of, Southeast Asia and the Middle East pretty much combined in many ways. Wow. And we're talking about a massive population that needs this help, right? The birth cohort in India is 27 million. So you're talking about more than, 130 million kids who at any point in time would need their parents to pay attention to them, right? In this demographic. Yeah. So it's a massive market. It's also a very fragmented market, and which is why people turn online to look for help. So if you look at basic Google stats, searches related to parenting and to baby care products are growing by 200% year on year, right? And if you look at the internet influence on baby care, it's the second highest to skincare. Right. Wow. So, you're talking about a big market. You're talking about a market that's coming online, and where online influence is very, very high. So, yes, it might seem like a niche market, but it's actually a deeply involved market, and it's a market that extends for, in our case, for more than 6 years of your life.
Right. No, so obviously the impact, like you said, the impact is massive, and even the numbers are which support that. Going into specifics on how much change you as a platform are creating for people, obviously access to information, community, raw data, much more organized data, like you were saying, how you've enabled a lot of these features. Beyond that, what do you see in real life? Do you see you guys impacting change, or do you see overall policies or overall behavior towards parenting also changing because of this democratization of information?
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that we are, fundamentally as an organization, as a company, we're very, very mission driven, right? So of course, we're venture funded, and we're looking to be big and, massive, and be a consumer tech, and we're essentially a consumer tech company. Bare bones. Yeah. But, the reason we exist is because we have a mission, and it's to ensure that we, create the next generation of happy, healthy Indian kids, right? And to do that, I think there are two things that we're actively working on right now. The first is we've recently launched a campaign that's actually a follow-on from a campaign we did last year, but this is a bigger, broader, larger campaign. It's #BreastIsBest, which is around promoting breastfeeding. And not just at homes, but also with working mums, right? So we're actually working with more than 200 corporates over the next 2 years to ensure that they're family friendly, that they're breastfeeding friendly, and that they're back to work mom friendly, right? So that's one of the initiatives we have taken up. The second initiative that we do day in, day out is to ensure that, we tie up with top hospitals and doctors to ensure that child nutrition practices and the right information is given to parents at the right time, in the right way. And, if you look at, there was an article recently which talked about how India has, 40% of its kids with low birth weight. And that's abysmal.
And that's been a problem.
It's been endemic. The numbers have actually increased between 2010 to 2015.
Wait, they're higher?
No, numbers have improved. My bad. Sorry. Okay. No, the numbers have improved, but not in low birth weight. Actually, numbers have increased in low birth weight, but in neonatal mortality, the numbers have actually decreased. 2010 to 2015. But I think, and the worst part of child nutrition and the problem there in India is that it's not always a problem of access. It's more a problem of information. Mm-hmm. So you actually have upper income quintiles in India having the same levels of undernutrition in their children as lowest income quintiles in sub-Saharan Africa.
That's bizarre.
Which is bizarre.
Is it dietary?
It's basically the wrong information.
Okay.
So the first 6 months, exclusive breastfeeding, something as simple as that, right? Weaning with the right complementary foods.
Right.
Figuring out what is the right mix of pulses and greens, and, how to really localize your weaning options, cut down on processed foods for kids when they're, between 3 to 5. I think all of these choices being made by parents today are not always the most well-informed. They might be the most well-intentioned, but not the most well-informed.
Is this a problem of tradition, basically, not being up to the mark in terms of this information? I get is the problem, but is the tradition that's driving this problem?
Tradition definitely plays a really large part of it. So, you do have people who, when the baby's born, are advised by their families to give janam ghuti or honey, right? Which is ridiculous, right? The first milk you feed the baby is colostrum, right? It's breast milk. So, yes, there is a definite part that tradition plays in it.
Okay.
And it is our responsibility, I think, as BabyChakra, in our own way, and of course with the overall collaborators that we have in the ecosystem we play in, to ensure that the right information, the right awareness is spread.
Yeah, and that's, so again, right, you're in a sense trying to assist as a companion to people who are looking for this information, but also one of the challenges is they should be open to it.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think, that's where you've really activated your own community to sort of empower that.
So this actually comes a bit from the experience I had working in public health. And I had a chance recently to talk to Amitabh Kant at Niti Aayog about it, right? I think the true innovation from a public health perspective of BabyChakra has been that we've given information and sort of advice on the right behaviors in a very sexy consumer-centric way, right? Typically, if you look at the way information was given, it was typically from a very stern expert who'd give you like a medical booklet and say, do this. Right? But BabyChakra is, I mean, look at the app, right? It's really fun. It's really beautiful. It's really, really engaging. We have mothers obsessed with BabyChakra, right? And the way the information is given and the way the advice and the conversations happen, it's very, very communal, right? So it's very community driven, very community oriented. So you feel like you're pretty much, getting advice on raising a child the right way in a very fun, very, sort of sexy consumer tech way, right? Which I think, frankly, from a public health perspective it has been for us a massive innovation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not typically health advice is very imposing.
It's from on down behind the mountain, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're actually saying that the fact that it's not imposing and it sort of lets you find your own right or understand the subject matter is what is actually helping.
And have a conversation around it. Think to the last time you went to a doctor, how long did the doctor have time to spend with you? Like literally 30 seconds and out, right? And imagine a mother in a doctor's chamber saying, what do I really feed my child now? How much time does the doctor really have? So where does the mother go, right?
Yeah, and these are all obviously the same like-minded people, so there's an inherent trust, like you said.
And it's a conversation, so you learn much better. Like, I mean, think about it, right? We had a chat before this, and I learned so much from Amit's experience building his company, right? And the best way I could have learned about his experience building this company was to hear him and to have a chat with him.
Right.
Yeah, no, conversation leads to illumination. I mean, and that's actually that's the idea behind the whole podcasting thing, right?
Sure. Exactly. There you go.
Exactly. No, so, and because it is such a sensitive and important topic to people, I'm sure they have questions and follow-up questions and more follow-up questions, and like, I'm sure I can imagine conversations which, just to be sure, a mother would just want to be like doubly or triply sure.
But Sheila, I think the other part to BabyChakra is that it's not just about learning. I mean, people come in, and it's very special about BabyChakra. They come in with the mentality to learn, which is amazing, and very few platforms have that. But they also come in because they're lonely. And because they want to let their hair down with people who are like-minded, who have a deep interest. Right? So we actually have moms come in and talk about things like beauty tips or like stretch marks or things like, my mom-in-law said this and like, how do I react? So we've had all sorts of conversations. So I think the key is to provide a platform that I think, again, going back to the basic principle, empowers you and is completely non-judgmental.
So we have a issue in India generally, right, where I think you brought this up briefly, like the idea that fathers are not as involved. Are there fathers involved on BabyChakra?
So we don't have as many as we like, but the ones who are involved are super, super, super involved. So one of the reasons we haven't also actively gone out and sought dads has been because we want to get our identity sort of attribution spot on, right? We've had men in the past, not fathers necessarily, but men in the past come and create some interesting, not very helpful conversations.
Trolls are everywhere.
Trolls are everywhere.
Trolls are everywhere, right? So I think for us, it's and we take that very, very seriously.
Yeah, no, you have to have a friendly environment for the kind of stuff you're talking about. You have trolling, and then all of a sudden the whole thing just goes up and stuff.
Absolutely, right? So we're very particular about the men who join the platform, but we've so it's interesting because you see this dichotomy. You see extremes, right? There are certain families in which men are, as they need to be, they are, they're parenting. They're actually parents, right? Yeah. And there's a 50-50, burden, and that's split, right? But there are other families where, men have absolutely no clue. So I think that number, though, is fortunately not growing.
Okay.
I have to check my facts on whether it's diminishing, but it's definitely not growing. The men who care are definitely growing, right? So I think there's hope, and I think that's definitely the way forward, just given that we live now in a unit of 3.
Right. No, and I think it was a good call on ensuring that the trolls are nipped in the bud because
We're waiting for you to join, Sheila.
I was gonna say that we've heard stories of like trolls going into all sorts of places, and we spoke about like Akrit and his chatbots and so on.
That was an interesting space too. Yeah.
So trolls seem to be everywhere. I mean, and
there's no getting around it. I mean, like that's just part of the nature of the beast, right? I mean, like there are always going to be jackasses when there are so many people on it. Even if they're 0.001% of the jackasses, you're talking about like 10 million people. That's still like 100 people.
And that's when communities get truly tested, and that's what is so inspiring again, because they get reported by our Mom Stars community members almost immediately. So I think it's awesome.
And I'm sure this is a community which is active all around the clock. I think
that's true.
3 a.m. answers. Go to the damn hospital.
And no, because one of the biggest facts I hear about parenting is that you don't sleep.
So
I hear that a lot too.
Yeah, the big fact around parenting is that 3 a.m. in the morning, there's a 99% chance your child will have a earache. Seriously, like all if you look at even Google Trends will tell you 3 a.m. in the morning is when how to deal with the earache in your child. That search spikes, right?
That's some interesting
insight. I know. I mean,
which also is a complexity for our engineering team because it means we can have no latency ever.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be fully
on.
But that brings me to the question: what's the roadmap look outside of the country? Like, what's obviously the global opportunity is also pretty big, right? So, are you thinking anything uniquely outside of India as well?
So the aspiration, of course, is to be a global company and to create the same experience of BabyChakra globally, because there's definitely need, there's definitely opportunity. But today, I think for us, over the next year and a half, I think it's India, and it's really cracking India and being synonymous with parenting in India.
Yeah, and obviously with the billion people here, or more than a billion people here, I think that's going to be quite a bit of your hands full anyway, right? So obviously on the -9 side, we can't go any further.
We can,
but
you can go back to the trying to conceive side.
So
really? We actually have. We're
Are you tying up with like Tinder or something?
We're not going that far back. I mean, that's another level of backward integration.
But maybe like helping with adoption and stuff like that, because that's a very complicated problem.
We do actually. We have experts who can counsel on how to adopt.
Okay.
We do have some of the, we have live chats, we have best-in-class content, we have a lot of moms who've adopted kids and are available to share their experiences with other parents on BabyChakra. We have teammates who adopted kids. We actually have an adoption leave policy.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
We practice what we preach.
You should.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, I'm looking forward to the kind of other changes you can implement, like you said, the stuff you're doing with corporates. If you can really change the way parenting is looked at, even from a career point of view, as a life stage one has to go through, even from a father's perspective. I know paternity leave is like non-existent, I think, in India. I'm not sure.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame because, I mean, if you look at it, and again, I mean, you're talking about maybe the 10% of dads, but they're really, really actively involved in raising a child. And the other problem is you're not giving an opportunity for dads to even experience what it is to be involved, right?
Yeah.
And that's a complete shame.
So going a little deeper into even this sort of the paternity leave side, or these sort of the career side of parenting, right? I mean, what you were just saying, dads anyway don't get to experience because they are the ones who have to go do the career while a mom has to be a mom. And it's similar, I'm sure, with a lot of other entrepreneurs, people who are starting their own businesses. They all have all the pressures of the business and everything else to deal with, while also having to deal with their own life and their own, child and so on. What do you think do you think that, are we as a society becoming a little modern in this aspect? Do you see that happening even in the conversations that are happening so far?
So, I don't know about society becoming modern or any of that, but I think if you just look, objectively, right, and you look at the data there, you have the lowest women workforce participation rates in the history of India, right? So you have like, I think 24% of your women who are in the workforce today, right? Which is ridiculously low.
This is the lowest in the history of India.
Yes.
It's not increasing, it's decreasing.
It's decreased.
Yeah, it's decreased.
That
is actually a fact.
It's actually, by the way,
this.
lower than actually the UAE, I believe. And I mean, so it's
that's by the way seen as this is actually seen as one of the biggest hindrances to economic growth.
It's a massive problem if that's
so
the
if
case.
you have like less than half your potential addressable workforce contributing, then you can imagine, I mean, what impact that has to our economy.
Wow.
But I think also from an individual's perspective, right? Imagine you're a recruiter and you're sitting across the table from two equally qualified candidates, one a woman, one a man, right? But for instance, that there is a Maternity Benefits Act, and that is essential because, I mean, a woman's body actually goes through a physical, 6 months is the basic that you can provide her. But if you know that the man in front of you as well would probably also be on leave for a specific amount of time, then you're more perhaps inclined to judge them with the same lens. Right? And I think the second part to it is, I think even for a woman to feel supported, and saying that, okay, I'm not only going to be the one at home alone with my child, with our child when the child is born, right? My husband will also have the ability and the support from his organization to be with me and to be with us as a unit to go through this journey together. Right. I think these are, you could talk about all the data and all the stats and all the figures, but these are the things that really matter when rubber hits the road.
Yes, exactly. And again, this is this sort of a bias which has to, which shouldn't be allowed to influence the way everything else works, right? Whether it's hiring as a recruiter, a very interesting example. So we'll see that changing, but I think it's changing more on the private front. But on the government side, I know you guys have been talking to obviously policymakers. You're at least bringing this out is what is important. I think you guys are doing that. So hopefully we should see some sort of impact of that in the long run as well.
Well, I think, for something like this, people like us actually need to make policies for this in our companies, right? I don't really have one. And now that you're saying this, it makes sense that this should just be policy over here. Yeah. That, you should have both of these things. You have maternity policy, you should also have paternity policy.
Just a interesting side question to this segment. The fact that, we've had so much massive population growth in the country, and there have been a lot of children who are not grown up healthy, and it's health and raising children have been issues throughout. Obviously, you're making parents smarter. You're making them do raise their child better. Do you see us as a country, because of all of this, becoming a healthier country and a country which can support itself better rather than the unstructured rate of growth that we've had all this while?
Fundamentally, I think all the work that we're doing is with a very specific purpose, right? And the purpose is to have the next generation of Indians grow up happy, healthy, right? And if I look at just when brain development happens, it happens in the first 1,000 days. Of course, it also happens in utero when the baby is in the womb of the mother. And which is why if you look at low birth weight babies, they typically happen to women who are undernourished, right? So, the entire continuum, like the -9 to, the first 1,000 days, you're actually working, and we are actually working to raise kids who will, then grow up to be healthy, happy adults. And there's, by the way, very interesting studies, and you're looking at journals such as the Lancet or the British Medical Journal that have actually longitudinally tracked children and their journey into adults. And undernourished children have actually had lesser lifelong earnings as adults than children who were nourished.
Interesting.
Better as kids.
Wow.
Right? So you actually have an impact on literally a lifetime trajectory based on how you raise your child in the first 1,000 days.
Interesting. And also, isn't there are a lot of correlations between income levels and fertility rates as well, right?
Yeah.
So to address Sheila's issue about overpopulation and stuff like that, they're actually doing a lot there. Because by getting more healthier kids, happier kids, and more higher earning kids, you will bring the fertility rate a little lower in some ways.
I mean, I wouldn't go as far right now.
We're talking about 35 years down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking like really, really far out.
Yeah.
But I think, right now we're focused on the first 1,000 days for sure.
Wonderful. Great. I think, again, my inadequate information aside, I think, this has been great. Thanks so much for sharing all this with us, Naiyya. I mean, where can people find you on Twitter and reach out to you? Where else can, obviously, BabyChakra be found? Anything else you want to tell
You
us?
could get our app. It's BabyChakra on the Google Play Store. We're launching our iOS app very soon, in fact, next month. So look out for that. And of course, we're available all time on babychakra.com. I can be reached at @Naiyya Saggi on Twitter.
Superb. Great. Amit, you want to read the credits?
Okay. Slack channel people, go to ivmpodcast.com/Shunya One. You will find a button over there to subscribe to the Slack channel. Please subscribe. And hopefully it's starting to get a little more interactive than it was previously. We've made some changes to it, so please do come on board. And the other thing that I wanted to ask for again is iTunes reviews or other reviews or stars or whatever ratings you can give, whatever you can give them. But if you can find a place where you can give us a rating, please do give us a rating.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, Naiyya, for being here. And let's hope to see BabyChakra globally huge in the near future.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out
IVM Podcasts
to get some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.